Thank you, Arjun. Um, we had an amazing couple of days so far, talking about resilience and innovation. And as I was with the team designing the summit, it was clear you cannot speak about resilience without speaking about Ukraine. And if you're going to speak about Ukraine, obviously you're going to speak about Kyiv. And I'm just very happy that we are able to present the story of Ukraine and the resilience of Ukraine, the people of Ukraine, and the city of Kyiv in specific. Before I introduce Marina, I'm going to tell you, this is all these photos you'll see are my own from my iPhone. And so I've been to Ukraine 3 times since January. And I go to Ukraine for work. But I would have to say, for me, it has transformed into more of a cause. It's not just work. And just an amazing, amazing city. Very beautiful. Touches your heart. You're very impressed. This is the office. This is our office, the Chemonics office in Kyiv. And you're working inside this office, and you get something like this. This is my laptop, ballistic missile threat.
Attention, air raid alert. Proceed to the nearest shelter. Don't be careless. Your overconfidence is your weakness.
Proceed to the nearest shelter. This is real life. This is coming on my phone as I'm typing. All of my colleagues are in the office. And we're lucky to be among the few that happen to have a shelter, access to shelter. Imagine how many hundreds of thousands of homes, how many offices do not have this privilege. But Kyiv is resilient and defiant, and Marina, who heads the Kyiv tourism department for the city, has these signs all over the city that Kyiv is waiting for you after the victory. And as a matter of fact, she has better success story than just the city, that we're moving forward. They're doing amazing things right now. And I just want to call Marina up to the stage. Give her a hand, please. Unfortunately, I wanted to interview her, but Paige McClanahan, where's Paige? There she is. Yeah, I think we're doing this session, so if you can go to the other side, to the left, and Paige will be here. So Paige, because she's more eloquent than I am, she'll be doing the interview. Paige is an acclaimed journalist. I was one of the few lucky ones to receive her newly published book yesterday. I even have a photo to prove it. So Paige, this is for you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibrahim. And Marina, on behalf of myself and everyone here in the audience, thank you so much for taking the time to join us at this conference and for coming up on stage here to share your story, because I think that's what we all would love to have a chance. Well, we all would love to have the chance to just hear your story and to learn what the last few years have been like for you, both in terms of tourism in Kyiv, but also for you professionally, to hear your struggles and challenges. And we'd also love to hear your vision for the future and how we here in the audience might be able to support you in achieving that vision. But just to start, I'd love to ask you to tell us about what the last few years have been like for you and how tourism in Kyiv has survived during the last few years.
First of all, I would like to thank you all for your warm reception here, and especially Ibrahim. It was his business trip to Kyiv, and of course, as all Ukrainians people, we are so hospitable. And I asked Ibrahim, what are you doing after your business meeting? And he told me, I don't know, maybe I go for a walk around the city center. And we did for him special road, special excursion, because we would like to, as usual, impress our beautiful city. Thank you, Pesha. I know that yesterday I suspected that you are a very good moderator and all people that like have a relaxed and just talk with you. And if you don't mind, I will talk about tourism because I'm really happy to be a part of a great tourism family because last 3 years we faced with unnormal situation in 21st century. And of course, the war, we fight for our territory, we fight for our freedom, for our independence. And of course, I am from side of Kyiv city, from our citizens, from Ukrainians. We highly appreciate for your support because we have weapons, we have support, financial support all over the world. People know about Ukraine, people know Ukrainians. And we are really happy that all of you help us in such difficult times. But today I would like to say a few words of vision about tourism in Kyiv. Of course, the last 5 years was very hard for tourism sphere, not only in Ukraine, just I think for all, because COVID-19 pandemic and after that the war made such losses for all industry. In 2019, we had over 5 million tourists in Kyiv. Foreign tourists in Kyiv, yes, we had. But after that, of course, its number were decreased by half in 2020. In 2021, we had, it was begin to raise up the number of foreign tourists, and we had the same figures like in 2019. But after that, after the invasion, all our initiative programs, of course, will be delayed. And of course, we are trying to cope with the situation because we need to understand what we will do, what we will do in tourism sphere in our life. And of course, nowadays, Ukrainians and me, as for me, we are trying to live under the material law. And we understand that we need to be creative, to live, to raise up our children and to love tourism. And of course, for us, for my department, we determined different priorities which help us to promote Kyiv in different ways. For example, for the first time, we participated in every year. We had such possibility to participate in different tourism exhibition. Of course, it's a good platform to promote Kyiv, and of course, we can't invite you to our country nowadays. It's all people understand. But the slogan which we created, Kyiv is waiting for you after the victory, with our defender Saint Michael, we are trying to say to all our industry, to all our guests that the best support for us in tourism sphere will be your visit to Kyiv after the victory. It was the first year during the war. We participated in 3 exhibitions, and our international partners gave us a possibility to participate for free. It was a good platform. After that, we next year, 2023, we spent with our slogan, and we united with our cities like Kharkiv, Lviv, Uzhgorod, Chernivtsi, Zaporizhia, and this year we had a huge booth at ITB Berlin, and we had a new slogan, Ukraine is here. And every city try also to spell this slogan. Kyiv is here, Zaporizhia is here, Kharkiv is here, and all our cities were united. And we try to explain the current situation in our country, in all our cities, because all of us have different situation. And we try to explain people how can we live, how can we work, how can we travel around our country. And you know, nowadays we are really happy that we have a little bit flows of local tourists. They're interested and they are fall in love in our country, inside the country, because Of course, all people know that such popular directions like in Turkey, Egypt, it was like in top of our citizens. But nowadays, they prefer to spend their times around the Ukraine in the Zakarpattia region and Lviv and Chernivtsi and travel a lot around the center of our country. That's why it's really, in this case, we see the advantage because they go through the Kiev, because they spend there 2 or 1.5 on 2 days, and after that they can move to other regions.
Well, that's wonderful. I mean, it reminds me, during the pandemic, a lot of countries saw a complete fall off of international visitors, but the domestic visitors still continued. So it's wonderful that even in the midst of your crisis, you're still having a little bit of tourism activity to kind of keep things moving. I would love to ask you, what kind of support do you need now from the international community? I mean, you described a few things that you were doing internationally. What do you need now from the international community to prepare for that moment when, Kyiv is able to welcome international visitors again?
Wow, I haven't heard such question from the time of before the war. Thank you, Paige. I think the main support is to support of our projects, because we do a lot of my team, and we try to be creative in our sphere, and we try to make a platform for all our hospitality, for our industry, because before the war it was operated 150 hotels in Kyiv. After during the war, most of them were closed. Some of them they gave the accommodation for free for volunteers, for defenders, for the migrants, our inner migrants. And nowadays, I think we need to be supported by using some experience. For example, today I'm really happy that I'm in Sarajevo, because they have a huge experience, and maybe is the first capital who can share with us experience how to make post-war strategy. Because, truly speaking, I received a lot of some propositions about how to help with strategy, with something. Only the country who understand us like what we are feeling can give us such experience. And yesterday it was a great event in the library, and at the same time museum, and I saw the photo exhibition, and of course also the similar situation nowadays in Ukraine. That's why I think we have a lot of projects. For example, we need to be accessible our center of city. We don't have accessible roads, because a lot of defenders, a lot of people now, they have, after injuries, they have a problem with this. And of course, this navigation which Ibrahim showed us, it was like, in the first day of war, we need to do something with this navigation, because a lot of maps there. And when we were waiting for the enemies, we tried to draw up all this navigation, and now we haven't navigation for our local tourists. Also, we would like to renovate. We also would like to make some tourism informational center, because nowadays it's really reopening and renovating gastronomical direction. A lot of restaurants after the war, they try to renovate their some approaches to promotion of gastronomic culture in Kyiv. And of course, some elements for tourism, for comfortable staying at excursion around the city. I think it's the best support. Maybe if you would like, I can give you a later list of wishes, how I would say. And but this is the main idea, to make a post-war strategy, and just step by step to do it.
That's wonderful. And, you point out the links between Sarajevo and Kyiv, and it does seem like the cities have a lot to learn from each other, a lot to share. And, I am thinking of so many examples of countries or cities that have come back after intense conflict and really built a very successful, strong, tourism program. I'm thinking of, Rwanda, Colombia, other parts of this region that have done that really successfully. So that gives me hope for you in the future. We're almost out of time. I wonder, do you have any final thoughts or messages you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, you know why Sarajevo? Because Sarajevo is similar like Kiev. That's why we are we have a similar history somewhere. We have a similar cuisine. We have a similar hospitality people here. And the main message, of course, the same. Kiev is waiting for you after the victory. And I think I would like to tell you a lot of things, but I understand that we don't have a time. But you need to love sphere in which you are working, and that's why we all people in our hospitality sector they are trying to do all the best to continue their work, because also we had very losses in money, in human resources, and of course we need to be together, to be stronger. After the victory, of course, we should be ready for tourism from all over the world. That's why we need maybe to support from your ideas. Maybe you have some advices, ideas, and some cases, real cases, how to implement different things in accessible tourism now. I will highly appreciate. We are open for any partnership.
Fantastic, and let's write that list and let's share it with share it with the USAID people.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Marina. Yeah.